and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for Bay Ford podcast. What is it, 927? This is Todd.
No, Todd, not
a.k.a. Negative Camber. You know I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm
exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we thought it would be a good idea. We had to go find him. I mean, he's been everywhere, folks. He's been in Daytona. He's already racing. His season is sprung. But we had to go track him down so we could do a season preview, a 2025 season preview, which, of course, means I have to get my co-host. That's right.
Out of the wasteland. He's bad. He's beautiful. He's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul.
Hey.
Of Heart of Racing Aston Martin team in IMSA.
I'm back.
Oh man, I got to tell you, you are busier than a cat in a litter box right now.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, it's
you got the
crazy.
Valkyries on the track. You got the GT3s. You got Race Down Under. It's crazy.
Down Under, yeah. Yep, it is crazy. I knew it was going to be crazy, but it's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah. It's been quite eye-opening. And I feel for the F1 teams now. in the because before we've had cars supplied to us by Aston, we fine tune them, we massage them, we run the setups we want to, etc. But it kind of comes nearly as a finished article. Well, now we're part of the process, right? Part of the process, like all the F1 teams, and you're designing something that was nothing, and if you weren't a part of it, it would stay nothing.
Yeah,
and the progress, backward steps, forward steps, the enormity of creating a car from scratch and getting all the parts and having the support and getting to understand it and trying to maximize it, and as well as just trying to run the race team as in a series you've not really competed in. It's something else. But I mean, it's awesome, but it is something else. And as I said, F1 teams have to do that every year. Luckily, we created the Valkyrie, and this is good for 4 years. So we'll kind of just massage it as we go, and have an evolution to it. But yeah, starting from scratch is every year. That's a big undertaking.
It is. Sure. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And, you're going to have niggles, right? Your door fell off in the first race.
Yeah. Well, it came open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Marco didn't see the sign that driving at 180 miles an hour with the door open is probably not good for keeping the door on the car.
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. But so that it wasn't that it blew off. It just kind of, the latch came open, but the lack of retarding speed blew the door off. So Marco's got a nice expensive door bill on his hotel room after that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh man, it's crazy. And the other thing, but those are all teething pains, right? You're going to have some of those. Oh
yeah, I mean there's more than that going on, I mean, the complexities of these cars are honestly very similar to Formula One, including the brake-by-wire systems and things like that, which has been awesome to be inside. And there's so much to that people probably don't even understand. It's such a big step in performance on just making the four corners slow down at different rates, and it's pretty cool how you can manipulate a chassis to do what you want to do just by manipulating how the brake pressure comes and goes.
Yeah. From
the beginning of a corner to the middle of the corner to you actually get off the brakes. Pretty intense stuff, and there's a lot of room there. And yeah, we're starting from scratch. Okay, we've got zero. Now how do you manipulate that? And Penske's and Ferraris of the world, they're 3 years ahead of us. So
yeah,
you have to try and get on the hurry up to try and understand what these things do and how to make the best of them.
Well, maybe you just go back to drum brakes with pads.
Yeah, you could. I remember, when I raced really without ABS most of my life, and so you manipulated everything with your own foot, right? And
yeah.
But right now, yeah, it's unbelievable what goes on there.
I got to tell you though, watching the video of the first race, you hear everybody going around, and the only thing that really you hear is that Valkyrie and the V12. It just sounds so good. It does.
You can at Sebring, you can't really hear a lot of cars, but you can hear them coming into 17, going down the straight, obviously go past you, but then you can hear it go through 1, then all the way down to 3, and boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And where there's other cars actually on the track right in front of you, but you can still hear that one down the road.
Yeah, you hear it. It sounds so good.
It is awesome. So I think it's going to be exciting for people to see it for real.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you guys are out listening, if you've got an opportunity to go and watch Heart of Racing Valkyrie run, you should do so. It's an incredible car. Paul sends me some of those behind the scenes videos that it's just awesome. It's awesome. Love it. Well, Paul, I thought we would jump on tonight and talk about the 2025 upcoming Formula One season, because it is an F1 podcast and that's kind of what we do. And I thought we would, let's just do a little table setting, a little formation lap up front. And then the format, folks, for the review is we'll talk through each team. So I'll start with the team and the car, and then we'll talk about that first, and then we'll go into each individual driver after that. So just so you can mentally prep as we go to teams, we'll talk about the team, the car, then we'll talk about each individual driver. But let's do a little formation lap. Just to recap, the regulation changes for 2025. There's going to be no extra point for the fastest lap. Just as a reminder, that's out the window. Yeah, bummer. Wee. Hold on. I got to get a tissue. Minimum driver weight has been increased from 80 kilograms to 82 kilograms. I don't know, what is that, 2,000 pounds? I don't know what that is in old money.
Something like that.
And they have a new driver cooling suit that they wanted to accommodate the additional weight. I've saw mixed reviews of that cooling suit from some of the drivers. Also, each team must field a young driver in their 2 cars at least 4 times this season. So that will be interesting. Let me try this in English, shall I? Technical regulations remain the same. So car evolution from 2024 will be the order. But watch for that in-season evolution to start. Keep in mind, we go into 2026, all new regulations, big regulation changes. So I'm intrigued to see the evolution or in-season development of these cars, and will some of those developments be actual developments that they're planning for the 2026 car that they're going to kind of retro in, because they wouldn't want to spend, if you're not one of the top teams, you've got limited resources and you really need to develop that 2026 car because the regulation changed significantly. So how much of that new kit as they develop going through this season might be pre-2026 type of tech, right?
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
It's going to be very tough.
Yeah, I can't see much transition there.
Yeah. Is it possible? Are there things?
What can you gain? The car's going to be so different. And it's going to be tough for these teams to make those decisions. But there's still championships to win and money to win. So those are resources unto themselves to go for, right?
Yeah, for sure. FIA announced a more stringent flexi wing test on the front wing in Spain. They already applied it for the rear wing for this weekend in Australia, but front wing in Spain. If you remember, a lot of allegations that McLaren kind of got away with a flexi wing. And flouted the regulations and got away with that. So I did see some headlines. There are already some people lodging complaints to the FIA for this season as well against McLaren. So we'll see. But as the pundits, and by pundits I mean the F1 press, they've picked a pecking order of the teams based on race sims during testing. We had our testing podcast where we talked about it, but the F1 pundits came out, and this is the order just as a baseline as we go through the teams. So pundits feel based on testing, based on as close as you could possibly get to apples during race sim runs during testing, they felt like McLaren was the team to beat, followed by Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, Williams, Racing Bulls are the RBs, then Haas, Alpine, Sauber, and Aston Martin in last. So yeah, I know. Here, I've got that. Yeah, there you go. So just to recap real quick, McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, your top four. Midfield, Williams, RBs, Haas, Alpine, and then Sauber and Aston Martin. All right?
Yeah.
So that's how they see it.
Yeah, I think top four's probably pretty solid
Yeah,
plan.
maybe.
I mean, obviously, whether they're right or wrong, but at least it's based on data and history. I would say that's pretty close. The Williams one's an interesting one.
That's an intriguing one, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a very interesting one.
I wonder if they're basing that on their. Now they have an actual good driver pairing.
Yeah,
They can actually make some progress.
right. It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. Well, let me put it this way. I hope they're right.
Yeah.
I would love to see Williams fighting for best of the rest, but we'll get into that. Let's jump into the teams.
It's time.
Okay. We're going to start off with McLaren. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri. Let's talk about the team of the car. McLaren entered the season as the favorites based on testing, and as we said, it's probably not a bad bet. They carry a lot of motivation and energy from last year, winning the Constructors' Championship into the 2025 season. And it's an evolution of last year's car, which many believe was the fastest car on the grid. So that's probably a good thing as an evolution of the fastest car on the grid last year. They also have stability season to season, right? They've got the same team personnel, no big shakeups there, same drivers, no big shakeups there. That's all good. And I guess that leads me to this conclusion. Paul, I'm curious what you think about the team car, but the car, let's just assume the car is there. We know they've got an incredibly strong driver lineup, so the drivers are there. But is the team's strategy and execution there, or will they stub their toe once again on driver feelings and team orders and papaya rules again?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is what they have is some mind space now. Because before they've been chasing. Oh my God, our car's crap. We've got to catch up. We're an embarrassment. Oh my God, our car's getting good. Okay.
Yeah.
Mid-season, their car's good. Now we've got to figure out what to do with our drivers. It was always kind of on the run, but now they've been able to sit back a little bit, analyze themselves, analyze how they approach the driver program. So I think they should, if they were sensible in the off-season, making a progress with the car, just a logical progress with the car, but look back at all their negatives and be able to take that. There wasn't too many negatives, but there were some, and they didn't optimize. So they definitely have space and latitude to do that, and I can't see why they wouldn't have addressed those things during the off-season.
Yeah, I think there's probably some serious conversation around that. You sound like you're fighting the flu like I am.
I had the flu. Yep, I'm on the downside of it for sure.
Yeah, I had. Man, it's just it's annihilated our entire household.
Oh, yeah. It's not fun.
Yeah,
not fun.
Yeah,
better to have it this week than next week. But
yeah, for sure. Well, both drivers will be told to play the team game, and they are one of the stronger driver lineups on the grid. I do think they're going to be a challenge to manage. When you think about the top teams, the top four, McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, there's only one of those teams where there's going to be a driver that's the clear favorite.
Right.
And that's Max, right?
Yeah.
The other ones very easily could have picking points off of each other, right?
Yeah, George Russell probably won't agree with you, but yeah.
Yeah, George probably wouldn't, but I think there's so much, head gray matter and emotional capital behind Kimi that it's going to be tough. Let's talk about Lando. From what we saw last year, Lando even furthered in my mind. We've watched this evolution of Lando, which has been amazing. He kind of came in, he was the impish jokester, on Twitch and all that. And then, he turned the corner when D-Rick showed up, and, he really has evolved, both in his racecraft, mentally, to try to get tough to take the fight for the championship. And I would say last year even furthered his mental toughness and racecraft, having to deal with Max. And I think he realizes now what it will take to battle Max, or anyone else for that matter, to win the title. I think it was, whoa, I think that was a wake-up call. There's that moment when you realize, kind of like Nico Rosberg did, what it will actually take to win. And Max's actions last year were probably a little bit of a wake-up call that would suggest that ambition trumps friendship, right? Yep. And Lando learned that. Lando may be the odds-on favorite heading into 2025, but it is going to take some ruthless determination to pull it off. And in my mind, I feel like he may have that now. Yeah. Right on all those counts. For sure, the Verstappen battle, Max is my friend. It's like, oh, shoot, maybe Max is... He left that friendship in the pit lane because it ain't out here, right? Yeah. And there are lessons to learn. How ruthless can you be? Some people are more uncomfortable with being that ruthless. Mm-hmm. But as we saw with Rosberg, he could only do it once, and then he was like, I can't keep this intensity and mindset anymore. Yeah, and I respect that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He got what he needed, but he didn't want to sell his soul for the devil completely. So right. I think it did open Lando's eyes to it. I don't think the thing is with Max, even though he's his buddy, I think Max can also handle it, and he's not going to freak out if all of a sudden Lando's got a cold spirit in his on his hands when he's fighting out there on the track, and they're just going to have to deal with it out on the track. So hopefully that's what he is doing. He definitely has the capability to do it because we've seen him do it, but to do it from a consistent race after race, there's a lot of races on the calendar. It's going to be very easy to slip back. It's very hard to, okay, it's go time again, and suck it up and be that mindset race after race. But it's what he's going to need to do, especially because of how good Piastri is behind him, who is pretty cold. Yes. Yes. And Piastri is not his best buddy. They get along because they're teammates, but Piastri is definitely in it for the reason Piastri is in it, right? Which is to win championship. And that's exactly how Lando has to walk in the room in Australia. Definitely capable. We just have to see what he does. You bring up a really good point, Paul. And I was thinking about this earlier today. When you think about the mental mindset of what it takes to win a world championship. Mm-hmm. You think of Senna, you think of Prost, Schumacher, Hakkinen, you think of Raikkonen, you think of Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. All of them have the propensity to be ruthless, right? Mm-hmm. Every one of them. Max is a machine, right? He just is. He's just a machine. He divorces himself of the emotion of that. And when I was thinking about it today, Paul, I was thinking Oscar is very much like that. But there's something about our friends. You know how much you and I love our Australian friends and Kiwis. There's something about that. When you think of Oscar and Liam Lawson is very much the same sort of mindset. He said, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to win. Right. And he's got that dogged determination. And I think Oscar has that too. And we know Max has that. Right. And we know Lewis does. Yep. The question is does Lando, right? Mm-hmm. And did he get that last year, having getting, punted around by Max a little bit? Yeah. That'll be the question. He has to. You got to. How often he knows
how difficult it is to get a car that can win a championship and win
Yes.
a race any day. And I think the lessons learned from the previous is got to, light a fire under him and just say, this is my time, because it has to be my time, because I don't know if next year will be my
That's
time.
right.
Lewis found that out too, right?
Yes.
He had his time, then all of a sudden something changed, and he wasn't driving the best car on the grid anymore.
You bring up a great point, because this has to be Lando's year. Has to be, right? And because there's no guarantees in 2026 that McLaren's going to get it right. Just like when they went to the ground effects cars, instantly Mercedes was not the top.
Right.
So there's no guarantees. You have to seize that moment when you have that opportunity, and Lando will have to do it this year, I think. Talking about Oscar's goal is to outshine Lando, and his performance last year put the team in an awkward position of team order mishap last year. His best bet is to do that again and to beat Lando and force the team's hand in backing him, because the team may not make the same mistakes they made last year. They may be a little more strict about when and who they prioritize, and he needs to be in a position to capitalize on the team's much stricter approach to team orders in 2025. There was a lot of wishy-washy last year. The team, as we mentioned earlier, may not be going into this year with that much leeway. They may be a little tighter on the team orders this year.
Right.
So in order to avoid that, his goal is to beat Lando. It's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they've had a nice gap. They've been manufacturers champions. Time to sit back and talk and have a plan, rather than all these decisions made on the fly. Oh my God, we're competitive. Oh my God, our guys are fighting. How do we deal with this? I wonder who's actually handling that, because I mean, we know Zach's a smart guy. He's a smart marketing guy.
Yeah.
He's a guy that puts deals together. He's a guy that puts right people in the right position.
Yep.
But who's handling that situation?
Yeah.
Who is the
Andrea
Mexican
Stella?
guy? No, I don't think so, because I really think you need a driver in there. I think you need a driver who knows what it's like to be there and knows what it's like from both sides, being, a leader and also a guy trying to make a point, and how to balance that. Joe Ramirez did it with Senna and Prost. Well,
yes,
it was difficult,
that's right.
but it was difficult.
Yeah.
But they need a type of that kind in there. I'm not sure Zach's that guy.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because Oscar's going to be getting an earful from Mark Webber.
Right. So Mark, who does Lando have?
Yeah.
To back him up, because Webber's a pretty smart guy.
Yes, he is.
And he's Australian.
Yes.
Right, as you spoke about, they come with a little something in them.
They do.
They'll start digging at you if you open anything up. So, Lando needs someone in his court, or the team needs someone who can sit down with both of them and come to a conclusion. And I don't know who they have in their system that has that kind of experience, but Mika Hakkinen would be one, but he's on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he he works in Mercedes, right, rather than McLaren. So.
Well, maybe there's a tie-in since they run Mercedes, but
yeah, but he would be the type of person I would want
to
be in the room with those guys. He's definitely been, in the wars with Schumacher and everything, and understands every single nuance on these things.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, because it's not going to really serve Lando or the team to have Oscar constantly picking points off of Lando.
No. But they also can't keep him down.
That's right. Unless you're totally fine with Oscar winning the championship. And if you are, then fair game, right?
Yeah. But they still have to measure that, right?
They do.
I think they can do it by letting the guys run whatever performance they have in qualifying and say, hey, if you're in front, Oscar, then feel you've got the priority. But it just can't battle each other.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I don't envy Zach and Andrea Stella, for trying to manage that, but I do think that's going to be yet again another challenge to kind of manage. In this season. Let's see. Let's move to Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton over at Ferrari. Ferrari looked good in testing. Many believe that they're just behind McLaren in pace. Some argue that they may have been sandbagging. I've heard that for years. As a Ferrari fan, I got to tell you, back in the early '90s, in the '90s, late '90s, early 2000s, you'd always hear the same, well, Ferrari in testing, they're sandbagging, they're sandbagging. I'm almost inclined, because that's such an old dog-ear narrative, think that Ferrari's the one spreading that rumor just to keep them in the news. But who knows? Maybe they are. But I am curious as to what their tire wear and degradation this year will be. It's been a bit of a moving target for their chassis. Now, last year, they improved it quite a bit. It wasn't totally solved because they were hot and cold track specific, right? And they've got to solve that. They can't be, they're a team that can't afford to be good at some tracks and not so good at other tracks.
Right.
You got to be good at every track.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's my question. Have they figured out the tire wear degradation? Have they figured out that chassis to be good at all tracks? Or are they still going to be hot and cold?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about sandbagging. You can't get to those conclusions in pre-testing this if you're sandbagging. If you're not pushing the car hard, then the things about the car don't become apparent till you get to the first race weekend. Right? They know that stuff.
Yeah.
There's ways of not going out and going a light load and qualifying tires and everything like that, but they're pushing for sure. There's too limited time nowadays to start sandbagging and hiding. It puts you in a bad place, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, McLaren certainly was the team to beat in 2024, but I think Ferrari will most likely have made more gains from last year's car, and that should bode well. But there's also the gap that existed between them and McLaren, so they're going to have to, make up the pace, cover the gap, and I am wondering if they've figured that out. Closing that gap over the winter, which could be, as I just said, you got to be good at all tracks. And if they've closed that gap, that every weekend on par, they're going to be a competitor every weekend, then they've got everything to play for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a different boat than McLaren, obviously, because the driver lineup's changed.
Yep.
There's a lot of build up to Lewis Hamilton coming to Ferrari. He comes with a lot of knowledge, but he also comes with a lot of particulars, I'm sure, of how he likes things. So they have to adjust to that. So it's not just rinse, lather, repeat from last year.
Right.
So, which it could be a benefit.
It could be.
Lewis is going to bring stuff, and we never thought of that, or that's how you feel. That's interesting. Charles never felt that. Every driver has different sensitivities to different things.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that evolves. I certainly don't think bringing Lewis is a bad thing for him, but it definitely is something different that they have to deal with, because there's a lot of responsibility on Ferrari's back, having Lewis Hamilton drive their car, let alone Lewis Hamilton coming to Ferrari and having the responsibility of it too.
There is, and to me, Paul, when we think about Lewis and Charles, to me, it's a different Ferrari. When we think about, Lewis, multiple champion going to Ferrari, and this can be great, and it conjures up thoughts about, when Michael arrived. But this is a different Ferrari than when Schumacher arrived. This team isn't being built around Lewis. It's already built around Ferrari and Charles, So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. And while many believe that this will be a second era of Lewis domination with Ferrari, it'd be great if that happens. But I think Lewis has a lot of work to do here. And we've seen how other champions get along with Charles. Think about all the wheel banging with Seb, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be that easy, I don't think. Charles is a hell of a qualifier, right?
Yeah.
And that's been a bit of a struggle for Lewis the last couple of years.
For sure it has, yeah.
So I don't know that it's going to be as easy. I'm not casting aspersions, folks. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Ferrari fan. I hope he goes in and they just dominate everything, of course. but I don't know that that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a little more difficult. This team isn't, when Michael walked in, the team was on life support, and they built that team around Michael, and he brought in key personnel and all that. All that already exists. Charles is already there. His feet's on the desk. He knows where the coffee maker is. He knows it all. He speaks the language. He speaks Italian fluently,
Yeah.
All of that is there. So I think it's going to be a little harder work for Lewis in that respect.
I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue between those two guys, because it's not like it's a young gun coming in trying to take Charles's job. I think Charles believes Lewis is going to come and he's going to go, and Charles is still going to be there.
Yeah.
This is, and also Lewis isn't going to be there for 7 years if he's, like the dominance he had at Mercedes. It's a different thing for Lewis this time.
Yeah.
He's a short-term guy, but they're not just treating him as a temporary employee. They want to make hay while the sun shines while Lewis is there, and they'd love for Lewis to start winning races. Obviously, they'd love to see Charles win the races, and they ultimately want to win the Constructors' Championship. So I think they're going to come at it from different angles. I don't think Lewis is going to be pulled into, oh my God, I've got to beat Charles every weekend in qualifying, else I lose my job. It's not happening, right? Lewis is going to be able to kind of come up with a good race run plan and execute it. So
I think you're right. I don't think that there is that like there kind of was, I think, with Seb and Charles.
Right. Charles was trying to come in and prove he's a superstar. Vettel was the superstar,
Yeah. I don't see that. Yeah, I don't see that relationship. I think for Lewis, this is more of a dream fulfilling move, right? But he's proven that he can make the right move just at the right time when the team is rising, right?
Yeah.
So this could be a rebirth of the 7-time champs F1 dream. Will Ferrari be the spark that reignites Lewis' passion and pace and title winning form? Maybe. It's difficult to know.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a more successful time than if Lewis had stayed at Mercedes. I just do.
Yeah, I do too.
I think he's going to win more races. Whether he can hunt for the championship, I don't know. But he's certainly going to have a better shot at it and be happier for it, because he's going to be more competitive from week to week to week.
Yeah, I think he'll enjoy that time there. For Charles, he spent the winter being sloshed around in the Lewis craze, right? One might expect a certain level of honeymoon type of behavior with Lewis, and that's understandable. But having been at Ferrari for some time now, I think if he wants to continue his dream of being a Ferrari world champion, then his single goal for 2025 might just be trying to make Lewis irrelevant in the conversation. There's questions and reinvigoration withstanding. Some wonder if Lewis has the pace to hang with the younger generation, and Charles might like to prove that he doesn't.
Yeah. I don't think Charles feels a lot of pressure from it, honestly. I think he's pretty confident in his abilities and just sees Hamilton as a support for the team, but not necessarily a threat for himself.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Let's see, Red Bull, you have Liam Lawson, Max Verstappen. I'm somewhat concerned about the lack of laps during testing with Red Bull at the bottom of the list for total laps ran. And I'm wondering if they felt like, well, everything's sorted. We don't need to run the mini laps, which I don't believe. And I think there were some issues. The teams will take all the laps they can possibly get. Max had a few lurid moments on track. It has me thinking that there may have been some issues. The team had serious issues mid-year onward last year, and it was down to Max's tenacity and the team's ability to turn those fortunes around a bit to secure the driver's title. But they do have a gap to McLaren, and that was somewhat masked by Max's ability in his driving last year. The team needed to cure those ills from last year, make up the gap, and I'm wondering if Adrian's presence there or absence, if that may not impact either of those challenges for the team. I think that's going to be difficult. Also, Paul, this whole issue with Horner has ramped up once again. Right now, there's another court case about this issue that happened last season. And let me just say this about that. I find the whole timing of this a little odd, if I'm honest. It caught us all off guard right at the beginning of the season last year, right? And then it was adjudicated twice last year and dismissed, only to rear its ugly head again right at the beginning of the season yet again. I mean, if Christian was making a case that someone had knives out for him and trying to destabilize the team and him, you can make a pretty good argument. Now, why just wait until the beginning of the season again? And yet here we go, more Christian Horner drama. I don't know. Just the whole thing is a big, big distraction this team doesn't need.
No, they definitely don't need it. Definitely, they've lost a little bit of their superiority for sure. Probably to do with a lot of shakeups in the team. I actually just saw the first episode of Drive to Survive, so that was all about Horner last year, right?
Yeah.
Geez, the look on Jerry's face. That was
brutal. She was not happy.
That was something else. I felt bad for her. But So I definitely think they're on downslide. Doesn't mean they definitely are gonna keep going down. They've got smart people there. They've been there before. They can do it. But it's going to take some adjustments. They hit the ground running last year, which was absolutely crucial to Max being able to win the championship.
Yep.
If it was a tale of the second half of the season, they wouldn't have been even close for him. And obviously they lost the manufacturers championship, mainly because Perez couldn't support him when they needed the support, and because no one can drive that car like Max can drive it. And difficult. I saw. Someone sent me a couple of videos. It was with Albon talking about driving with Max, and also Lawson talking about driving Max's car.
Yeah.
And how difficult it is because of how sensitive the car is. The car, you turn the wheel, half a degree and the car wants to change direction, which is great for a car. If you have a car that's that sensitive, it's amazing, as long as you are capable as a driver to control that sensitivity, in which Max seems to be the only one capable of doing it. And it does two things. It makes the car fast, also eliminates your teammate ever being a threat to you.
Yeah.
So that's going to be real difficult for Liam this year. I think something that you wouldn't know till you are in the team and driving alongside Max to know where that gap is, and can anyone drive a Max Verstappen designed and balanced car? I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. If the car hasn't closed the gap to McLaren, Max is going to have a lot of work to do. The good news is he can do it.
Yeah.
And he knows what needs to be done. If the car is thereabouts, I think Max is the guy to beat in 2025 again. If it's thereabouts. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because I think the other teams are going to, you're going to have these driver pairings taking points off each other.
Yeah.
I think there's a singular focus behind Red Bull that's going to favor Max. I think that'll benefit. But that's if you think the car is there or thereabouts. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell because he got it there or thereabouts because he's Max Verstappen.
Yes.
When the car, as we saw when Perez was driving it, it was nowhere.
That's right.
So how much can he carry the car on his back?
That's the big question. And will he have to, right?
Yeah.
If the car just is not there, there's only so much. He's human. There's only so much he can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then from Liam's standpoint, I think, Liam's going to be a step in the right direction. And I think his job, whether he wants it or not, will be to finish on Max's tail and reopen Red Bull's assault on the Constructors' title by maximizing points, no pun intended. I don't think he should really waste his first season trying to get embroiled in a battle, trying to knock Max's feet off the desk. I think that's a waste of his time. I think it's pointless. Yeah. I think he should spend the time being the driver Sergio wasn't and what the team needs, because if the car isn't there, Max could very easily get tired of this and leave, and that leaves Liam as the future,
Yeah.
So I don't think he should get all hung up like the other drivers did, you're not beating Max. he shouldn't worry about that. His concern should be beating everyone else and maximizing points. Finishing on Max's tail at every single race and maximizing points would be a great victory for him, in my opinion.
That would be. How he gets there is going to be difficult, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he's kind of, as I mentioned, the setups that Max likes most other drivers can't handle. So he, as a rookie on the team, is going to have to try and guide his car, his side of the garage, to more his driving style somehow.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because the team's like, yeah, but Max can, as it's set up right now, makes it work.
Right.
He's got to have the tenacity to be able to say, well, that's fine because that's Max. I'm Liam, and this is how I need the car to work.
Right. Yeah, I'm intrigued by Liam. He's got that fiery, ruthless personality, and I'm kind of curious to see how that'll work this year.
Yep.
Be interesting. For Mercedes, you have Kimi Antonelli, George Russell. I may have a little more positivity about Mercedes than what the pundits do. Coming out of testing, I felt like they looked pretty good. I was watching the onboards; they looked pretty planted. Didn't see anything radically wrong with the car, but I could be wrong. I thought it looked like they've made a significant improvement over last year. Would I put them ahead of Red Bull? I don't know. I'm not sure, but it wouldn't shock me if they were. But that depends on their tire performance issue being cured from last year. Kind of very much like Ferrari, right? There were tracks and tire performance and heat windows that they were good at, and then others that they just were a no-show.
Also, the aero thing was a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
From track to track.
Yeah.
If they had to raise the car, it just wasn't working.
It wasn't working, yeah. And the car is an evolution, obviously. And if you consider this ground effect era as being kind of Mercedes' Achilles heel, then maybe the pundits are right. Maybe the car isn't quite there. While it's an evolution, it's still behind an ultimate pace because this era has really stumped the team, right?
Yeah.
So are they chasing that bugbear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Difficult to know.
It is difficult to know. I mean, they had high points last year for sure.
They did.
But they also had pretty low points where they just looked like they couldn't figure anything out.
Yeah.
It's one thing not to be competitive, the another thing to not understand why you weren't competitive.
Yeah.
Which they were scratching their heads a lot.
Yeah.
So hopefully it seemed like they were better at the end, obviously, I think. So hopefully they carry out on to the new year. But they're a team that are really on that cusp of how much do we care about this year versus we've got the resources and the people who could, if we got it wrong now, let's fix it. So 2026 onwards, we're not back in the same position again.
Right.
They're a team that I could see cutting off evolution sooner than maybe the other three teams.
They're going to want 2026 to be like 2014 for them.
Yep.
They want to dominate this next iteration and era of Formula One, like Red Bull has in the ground effect era, right?
Yep.
So you're right. I think that'll be interesting. For George Russell, I think George is the leader of the team. That's good, but he has to deliver and can't make the odd mistakes like he has, been prone to do in the past. And this has to be a perfectly executed season for George. And if you have to consider that 2026 as well, because they may find a disgruntled Max Verstappen could find a home over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way that they feel about Kimi, I think George gotta watch himself, right? So George prides himself in being loyal to Mercedes. I get it. I feel like he's the de facto leader of the team, but he's got to execute. He's got to deliver. There can be no unforced errors like he's had in the past. He's got to deliver. And that's the big question, because I think with Kimi in hand, I think they would make room if they had a shot at Max or some high profile.
Right, right. It's interesting, which you've mentioned ever since George got on the team, was they don't seem outwardly to have that deep respect for George's abilities. They
No,
accept that George is a good driver and he was a great addition to the team, but they're not fanboys of George Russell.
not like they
And
were Lewis and now Kimi.
no, no, no. Now, from what I hear about Kimi is that he just has one gear, which is just full out all the time.
Yeah,
That could play to George's strengths, I think. So George can't be caught in a battle of speed supremacy with Kimi. It'd be hard because if Kimi's out qualifying him somehow,
yeah,
it's gonna be really hard for George to swallow. But it's the results in the end that count. And yeah, it's easy to be fast if you're also making mistakes 50% of the time. So there's going to be that adjustment, that learning phase for Kimi Antonelli. Obviously a great talent, but it's got to be nurtured, and experience doesn't come. You can't just buy it off the shelf. It's
yeah.
got to be
It takes
earned,
time.
and it takes time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, up front, I think it's great to have an Italian back in F1 again.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. And I really like Kimi a lot. I think he's a pretty nice young man. I see what Toto sees in him, but I hope the fans in Panic can right-size their expectations from him in his first year. And not place too much pressure on his shoulders. He has a lot to learn, as you just said, Paul.
right.
But I admit also, though, we always talk about, excuse me, we always talk about these rookies. Well, they got a lot to learn. You got to cut your teeth, get your racecraft, and that. I got to be honest with you. When you look at the rookies coming in now, though, Paul, I think Oscar
Yeah.
Piastri raised that bar so high
Yeah.
that this whole notion of, well, give him 2 or 3 seasons to kind of get his sea legs, that doesn't exist anymore. Oscar came in, hit the ground running. Yes, he had some unforced errors, but these rookies they look fantastic.
They do. It's and it's got to do with the car design. How they are to drive versus how it was 20, 30 years ago, where
Yeah.
but also all the prep that the teams get. Yeah, there's not that much off-season testing, but the sims are so good that these guys are practically driving every day. So when they do leap in to a car, they are literally just on the cusp of their experience level. So it's
Yeah.
not as difficult, so to speak, to come in at a level that shows ultimate competitiveness. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, and that's changed quite a bit, even from when Max got into the series.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Next up, I've got Aston Martin. You got Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso. Pundits have them last, and I hope that isn't the case,
Yeah,
as that would be a disaster for Lawrence and the team, who have spent millions and millions of dollars on a new facility, on Adrian Newey. Although this isn't Adrian's car, so maybe if they are last, maybe to your point, they're really focused on 2026. But
yeah,
but perhaps they can develop this car into a top 10 finisher this year. They were last year. I'd rather see them hit the ground running as best of the rest contender this year, is what I was hoping for that team. But I don't know. Jury's out on what that'll look like. Hopefully they're not last.
yeah. Hopefully they're not lying. It's because the Aston Martin story over the past few years has been kind of crazy, right? I mean, they Fernando was nearly winning races
Yeah.
like 2 years ago, whatever it was,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, "Oh, Aston Martin! Oh my God!"
Yeah.
And Alonso, "Wow, we can do anything at Aston Martin." And obviously, the bloom fell off at some point, and
Yeah.
the team started going backwards in development and backwards in pace, and getting struggled more and more, and then nearly became also Rans last year. So I don't see them being the last team, but I have no inside knowledge of what they've decided to do for this last year before the new rules. But when you've got Newey in the office scribbling away, where do you want his attentions.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
But you have to keep the team running. You have to keep the team's procedures getting better and better. You've got to have everyone learning and know how to progress a car. You can't just, dust it off at each race, put it on there and say, well, have fun, guys. We'll see you in, 3 days. You've got to keep the team working as a team and work it as a progressive team and trying to solve problems.
Right.
Else, when you do get to 2026, you're going to be backwards.
Yep.
So the team has to keep working hard. And I think Nui will obviously, step out of his office and take a look at the new car, and maybe able to, the 2005 car, and maybe able to help out here and there. But his attention is definitely 26 because that's where they can make the biggest leap.
Right.
So we'll see. I think they're going to be about where they were. I don't think it's going to be a disaster, but I don't think they're coming with any revolutionary cars there for this last year of this rule package.
Yeah, that's kind of was my hunch too. You got Fernando this year. It's going to take a lot more patience from Fernando if they aren't quick. And one wonders how much patience Fernando has. And then I think, well, I think he'll be measured in his approach to this year because I think he knows Adrian Works comes out next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe Fernando's doing a little bit of sitting on the egg here. From his perspective, he just needs to be patient to see what 2026 will deliver.
Yeah, tough to do because he's getting older, right? This is his last push to be on a race-winning team, and he's hoping some of this stuff will actually pay off in the end, and I hope it does. But yeah, it's another year. We know Alonso, when there is no hope, he I'm not saying he gives up, but he doesn't see any point in just filling up the numbers either.
Right.
He'll fight like a bull, but it could be we won't see the best of Alonso this year if the car really isn't up to snuff.
I agree. I don't know. And from Lance's perspective, maybe retaining Lance may be an indication that the team know this year is going to be a bit tough. So there's not a huge point in changing drivers at this point, However, I think if they were looking for future performance, having a strong rookie this year would have made more sense heading into 2026. But, maybe the team's thinking, look, it's going to be a tough year. It's an evolution of last year's car. We're not expecting to win the championship this year. We've got Adrian in. We're focused on 2026, big regulation changes. Why change driver lineups at this point? It doesn't make a lot of sense. We're going to try to do the best we can in 2025, and we're putting our chips down in 2026. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that's what they got. Obviously, the dynamic in the team with Lawrence and Lance is different than any other team probably.
Yep.
But it's a fair crack from both sides. What you said is why change the drivers, because the drivers aren't the problem, the car's the problem.
Right.
If Alonso's winning races and Lance is for 18th, then the driver's the problem. But it's I don't know. But there is also a lot of weight to bringing in a new driver if you think there's someone in your group that you feel is going to be the replacement. Because if you think Alonso's going to be around much longer, he's not.
Right.
And every not the fan popular vote is Lance. Is he going to be around much longer? I don't know. So they could have a major upheaval in driver lineups right when they're getting a really good car going. But Alonso's gonna, if it is a really good car, Alonso's you're gonna have to take him out over his dead body.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see, Alpine. You've got Pierre Gasly, Jack Doohan. Testing may not have been the best, but I think there's an element here that we may be missing, and that is the Flavio factor. He is draconian as hell, and I think that the team is under a lot of pressure now that just wasn't there this time last year. And that's just Flavio, I would love to see them contend for best of the rest this year, and perhaps they can, But as an evolution of last year's car, that may not be in the cards, although the second half of the season last year I thought was a marked improvement for them. You think of their performance in Brazil, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to know with any certainty, but like other teams, they're going to have to raise and improve their pace from last year. There was a gap that they got to manage and try to get better, and they need to be better, better at all races, not just Brazil. And hopefully they will be. Like I said, I guarantee you that team has more pressure on them today than 12 months ago.
Which is wrong, because they should always have that pressure on them being who they are. I understand what you're saying. I think the car did get better for sure, and I think they should be taking some of that motivation for this year, so I don't think they're going to be in too bad a shape. Briatore's a weird guy, right? He's not an engineer, never been a race car driver.
Nope.
But he simplifies everything and calls everyone out on it.
He does.
Right? Yeah, and I don't care how it gets done. You just do it.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you're a good or bad driver, if you're a bad driver, you're out. I'll get a good driver. If you're a good engineer, I'll figure out who the bad ones are. I'll get you out. I'll get somebody else in. He was the one who began the engineer poaching scheme way back when. That now is very prevalent, obviously, but he was the one guy that said, hey, it's way cheaper to pay for the intellectual property of the people than it is to spend all this money on laboratory results and training, right? So, he started the whole thing, and so if he's going to bring a very clear cut, and some find painful, not very sensitive,
no, he's not,
approach to racing, which is probably what Renault needs.
Yeah,
honestly, it's or Alpine, whatever. It's they need people not to find excuses why they're not there. Right? Because of this or this. He just wants to find solutions.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I don't think he's real high on the empathy meter.
No.
And I think he's just going to get rid of whoever he doesn't think's cutting it. And he'll go out and hire the people.
He will find you.
Yes, he will. From Pierre's standpoint, I think Pierre is the least of their issues, if I'm honest. I think Pierre is a seriously underrated driver on the grid. And given what he has to work with, I think he's done a great job. And I think he'll deliver again this year for sure. I don't think he's an issue for them. He shouldn't be an issue for them. I think he's a damn fast driver, if I'm honest. So I just think he needs to continue doing what he does, which is deliver. When the car's there, you deliver. And I don't think he's never really not done that. I think he's really grown into to be quite a racer. He just didn't have the tools to show it.
No, he's done a great job with what he's had.
Yeah.
It would be great to see him in one of the top 3 or 4 cars.
It would.
I really think he would show something, and he does anyway. I don't think there's anyone on the grid that doubts that he's not a very fast driver, but just the musical chairs just haven't worked out for him ever since he got kicked out of Red Bull, which he got kicked out of way too quick. So.
Way too quick. That was too early. I agree. For Jack, I'm not sure why there's such a cloud over Jack coming into this season, other than maybe Flavio isn't convinced and Colapinto is reportedly has $20 million backing. So maybe that's really nice to have. And it's a tough situation for Jack, if I'm honest. It's not the fairest way to enter the sport. I would say that his mission, this is just my opinion, but is to be there or thereabouts with Pierre. Yeah. But his main mission is not to crash, right? And not to cost the team a bunch of money. Just do what Pierre does, right? Finish right there with Pierre and deliver the results when you can get them. Take as many points as you can. Have strong races. Don't do anything stupid. Don't give Flavio or the team a reason to start sniffing around Colapinto and the $20 million, right? So just being good, heads-up performance, learn as much as you can from Pierre and be right there with him. I think that's the mission. Now, you could argue a counter to that is that that's not a big charter for a person to do if you want a long-term F1 career. So maybe your career in F1 may not be at Alpine, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And so maybe the counter argument is no, get in there, push like hell to start really auditioning for a ride elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough situation.
He's got the toughest job on the grid
I think
this
so
year
too.
as a driver. I mean, he's coming in when they're already talking about his replacement. He hasn't even turned a wheel yet. He's not done anything wrong. I mean, he did do one race. He was okay, and I think that's kind of the expectation, though.
Yeah,
He's kind of like, oh, I'm bringing in my nephew here to run this department now.
Yeah.
Everyone, okay, because he's dynamic. Well, no, we're just giving him a go. He's paid his, because I mean, Jack was brought in like he's paid his dues.
Yeah.
Here's his chance. It's not like we think Jack is the next coming,
right?
And we think he's going to really help this team. So his introduction into the team wasn't the best either, right? How they introduced him or why they took him on. It was more like who we don't want on the team rather than we want him at the team.
Yeah.
And then the Colapinto thing came along, which I think is, $20 million makes more sense to me than what Colapinto did in the car. I think he's not the next coming. He's had some spectacular drives, but I don't think he backed it up with a lot of work, really. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good Formula One driver. I just I don't believe the hype yet.
Yeah.
And that $20 million may get sucked up pretty good in a few crashes,
Yep.
But because Jack isn't brought in as a, the Kimi Antonelli type,
right?
He's under pressure instantly, and that's no way to really start your F1 career. Already been having the guy that wants to pinch your ride is already in the garage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's got to come up with something. He's got to come up with a strategy. Let's say maybe his life isn't at Alpine, but this is his chance.
Right.
And some people can flourish like that, honestly.
Yeah, I hope he can.
You never know.
I hope he can.
I hope he can too.
And I hope he really kind of turns this as an audition for a ride, more longer-term ride elsewhere.
Yeah.
Let's see, Haas F1, Esteban Ocon, Ollie Behrman. Io's done a great job. There's been a lot of change at Haas in the last 2 seasons, and this year's really no different with 2 new drivers and one who comes with some baggage in Ocon, right? Behrman's a good addition, but his race in Brazil left a lot to be desired and was a reminder that there's a heck of a lot for him to learn in this series.
Yeah.
So as for the car, they got beaten by Alpine for 6th last year. It's an evolution of their car to take the fight to Alpine and others for 5th and 6th. The pundits don't rate them that high. It's a tall order for them. It's going to be a real challenge for Io, but without Magnussen and Hulkenberg and that consistency at the wheel, that's just another dynamic he'll have to manage, right? And I think that'll be tough. It puts a lot of weight on Ocon's shoulder, and the question then becomes, is Ocon the guy, right? That can deliver like, Nico Hulkenberg would have or Kevin Magnussen would have. So I think that, maybe the pundits are right to have a little bit of a question mark about Haas running into this year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think they made great progress, and they made good progress consistently.
Yep.
It wasn't like they were one-shot ponies and then they all disappeared. But then they did have the backup of the 2 drivers with a lot of experience, and that helps. We don't know how good Ocon is as a leader or as a developer. He's always been an antagonist. That's for damn sure. We know that
for sure.
But how good is he as a mentor, even for Ollie Behrman? I don't think he's a mentor at all.
Yeah, I don't either.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that team develops, because I think Ocon is in it for himself, and Behrman's going to be kind of on his own trying to figure it all out, and I'm not sure that's the best thing for a team in such a tight battle in the midsection there.
Yeah, my view on the drivers, I think Esteban comes with baggage, and his Monaco antics last year were a bit of a yellow card for him in his career, if I'm honest. So, can Komatsu calm the inner monster and get the best out of Ocon? I think that's the big question mark. For Ali, I think he's got to make the most of the opportunity for a future role at Haas or ride elsewhere. As a Ferrari stable driver, I'm not sure there's much room at Scuderia at the moment.
Right.
Or will be anytime soon. And so he needs to make the most of this year and also audition for a role with a bigger team with a faster car, or at least solidify his opportunity at Haas. But maybe, put himself in the shop window for like Aston Martin or McLaren for the future.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, it's early days for Beerman, so I don't think you should expect him to be taking that leap into a Ferrari in the next 2 years. And
no.
I think in the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be an opening at Ferrari. So
right.
If he can make an impression, a consistent impression, I think he could
stay at Haas for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's where he should be. If he thinks he's going to get, for his best bet to get a top line ride, I think is Ferrari. So it's up to him to make that Haas ride work for him.
Yeah, yep. Let's see. What is it? V-Carb, Red Bull Racing Bulls, whatever the RBs. Isaac Hadjar, Yuki Tsunoda. For me, this is the best looking car of the 2025 season livery. During the launch, I loved it. But is it fast, right? I wonder if the team have developed a stronger car for 2025. Pundits feel that it's quicker, so that's good news for them. But I think Laurent has a lot of work to do. He's got his work cut out for him, trying to move this team into a more competitive position. I think it's going to be a difficult ask for this team.
Yeah.
They're a development team for Red Bull. They've got a Honda engine. How much can they produce? I think that pundits are rating them higher than I think maybe where I would for this year.
Yeah, it's this is the worst driver lineup on the grid. For two different reasons. One of them is going to be development.
Yeah.
The Red Bull shuffle with people, with Perez and everything just caused kind of havoc amongst their choices.
Yeah.
And they put Hadjar in there, but I'm not sure he's the guy to be teamed with Tsunoda. I mean, Yuki, obviously, I don't rate him super high, but he can go fast on occasion, but I think he's going to be really hampered with development, and I don't think Hadjar is going to be any help to them either. So I think this team, even if they come out with a strong car out of the box, and I've got no doubts that they probably can, I think that car's been kind of handy, pretty consistent, but I just think the driver's going to let them down in that race to improve the car.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough driver lineup, tough season for the team. We talk about Yuki's anchor management issues, but Isaac's got them too.
Yeah, as we heard. Yeah.
And so you've got two hotheads at the team. Also, I saw some rumors that maybe Honda might be a little bit at arm's length with Yuki now, distancing themselves from him a little bit. So I think it's going to be a tough season for RB. Although I think the car looks fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, it might be a shame that the drivers they have that car in their hands.
Yeah, for sure. Williams, Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz. Pundits would suggest that this is the year that Jimmy V, James Vowles, and team make their move towards best of the rest in F1, and I do hope that's true because there's a lot to love about Williams these days. Love this team, love what they're doing. You called it out a couple of years ago. James came in. They had a initial immediate improvement, and you were like, yeah, that's the low-hanging fruit. Wait till the next year. Boom. Yeah. He got it kicked like a stray dog, that second year. So this year, they look to improve this year. And last year, they got better in the second half, Paul. They really did. They got on top of some of that tire wear degradation, same thing. They had tracks they were good at, tracks they weren't. And, James has always said that, there's going to be tracks that we're good at, tracks that we're not. But in order to be best of the rest, you got to be better at all the tracks, right? Mm-hmm. And so could this be the year that Williams moves from the back of the grid up to really contending for midfield, nipping some podium, maybe definitely nipping points every race, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be the goal.
Got to be the goal. And
Yeah.
and I think they're capable. I think
Yeah.
a lot of lessons have been learned, but you saw the turnaround and the
Yep.
approach and with the car, and sometimes they surprise themselves how good their car was coming off
Yeah.
out on the track. And the driver lineup you can't question. I don't think at this point.
No.
They have been hampered by mediocre drivers. Half the garage was kind of a rent-a-ride kind of situation, right?
Right.
So that's nothing to inspire, and it's also nothing, kind of like with the Racing Bulls, it's nothing to help the car progress either. But I think Carlos and Alex together, I think that's a great partnership. I think they've got a lot of depth to their driving and to their technical ability, and they've been around the houses a little bit too. They've seen a lot of things, and I think them combined with James Vowles, I think it's going to be strong, and I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
And you gotta. There's a little bit of a message in this for me, Paul. Curious to get your thoughts. Colapinto was in their stable.
Mm-hmm.
James wanted Carlos. They've
Right.
got Alex. Alex is a seasoned driver. He's great. They could have easily moved Colapinto in.
Yeah.
Didn't want Colapinto. He wanted Carlos, right?
And you know what that says? If James is no idiot, it's like we're ready for Carlos.
Yeah. A
Right.
lot of people wanted Carlos. Alpine wanted him. Sauber wanted him. Audi, right? Other teams, Mercedes may have taken it, but James wanted him bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he got him, and over Colapinto. So that's just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex struggled more last year than he had in previous seasons, and I think his two new teammates going to rejuvenate him. I think he'll have a lot of focus and performance. I think he'll work really well with Carlos. I think they'll be a good pairing. And from Carlos's side of it, I think it's a unique story, and it'll be interesting to see what Carlos can bring to the table. Williams have two very good drivers. Carlos is going to raise the bar at Williams, and I think raise the expectations to deliver a better car for a brand as strong as Carlos,
Yep. Agreed.
And he'll go over there. You can't have any of these bobbles in the pit stops and, oh, well, we're really not good at about 60% of the tracks. Oh, BS.
Yeah, what, you going home? It's 8 o'clock. What are you doing?
Yeah, come on.
Are we on the pole position? No. Get
Right.
back to work.
I'm Carlos F. and Sainz. I'm here to win. I'm here to bring this team back. You can't give me this crap.
Yeah, right.
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 So I think it's going to work twofold. I think Carlos being there is going to raise the game of Alex. I think it's going to raise the game of the team to really overachieve. And I think it's good all the way around. And I'm sure that's why James hired him. It's a brilliant move.
Yep, absolutely. I think so.
Yep.
But as I said, I think it's because James, to sell that to Carlos, must have been quite right. And he's not a he's not
a bullshitter.
He's not a bullshitter, right? So
Yeah.
he's going to say things as they are, and Carlos will be like, okay. And Carlos is an emotional guy. I mean, him getting kicked out of Ferrari is gut wrenching for him.
That's tough.
Right, so he's here to prove a point. So these are all the three musketeers together, quite honestly.
Yeah.
It will be fun.
I'd love to see Alex and Carlos and James take that team back up to the front. Would be awesome.
Yeah.
Be awesome. And then finally we got Sauber, Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hulkenberg. Is the car improved? If it is, then Nico's going to deliver. I don't think there's any question of that. I think Nico showed that at Haas. Will 2025 simply be a holding pattern for this team until Audi arrives, or will they become a more competitive team in 2025? The pace and the team seemed to stall out last year, so maybe they can improve the car, and if they do, then there's little doubt that they'll get some performance in Nico and Gabriel. I really believe both of them can deliver, but the car's got to be there, and the question for this team is it going to be there?
I don't feel like it will be, but Audi can't keep hiding behind the Sauber name anymore.
Yeah,
They can't say, oh well, yeah, but this is just we're just observing now. They've got to get their their hands dirty right now and try to do something. But I just think the DNA of this car is terrible, and I don't know how they can even make a evolution of it any better than it was.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of hope. I feel bad for Nico, but this is a team that has definitely got a lot of onus on 2026.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, they do.
Hopefully they've gathered enough data to know what Formula One's all about on the Audi side. But man, they've really got to make a difference in 2026.
Right. Yeah, I do think Nico is a perfect driver for this transition from Sauber to Audi. I think he's going to be really instrumental in helping Audi get on top of their chassis as soon as possible, and hopefully they'll utilize him this year to do that. Bortoleto, I think it's great to see a Brazilian back in the sport. Gabriel was quite a talent in the junior series. Here's my hunch. He may be of a bit of surprise this year in 2025. I hope so. I hope it turns out that it is a good hire for them. He's kind of gone under the radar as far as getting all the talking points. That's been Kimi and Jack because of the position he's in and those kind of things.
Colapinto
Even Colapinto. And nobody's really talking about Gabriel that much. But he did incredibly well in the junior series. So I hope for his sake he kind of comes in as a bit of a pleasant surprise for the season.
Mm-hmm. Definitely no pressure on him, I think.
Yeah,
so that's good.
It is good.
Hulkenberg, he's just happy to be there for the most part. He does a great job, but Hulkenberg's just happy to keep a continuation of his career, and in the hopes that the Audi name will help elevate this team back to competitiveness, which will obviously Nico really wants to be. So.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that does it. Let us know what you guys think about the preseason review. Tell us what you think the teams and drivers might do. What we missed, let us know. But, Paul, I did have, from Shumi in Toronto, I did have a mailbag that had been hanging on for several weeks because you haven't been on.
Okay.
And so let's do that real quick.
You've got
it's
mail.
An interesting question. It says, question for Paul. This is back on the 12 Hours of Bathurst. He said, I was watching.
Bathurst. There you go.
There you go. He's wearing the Bathurst Harder Racing shirt. So for you watching, he had a keyword version of the Harder Racing shirt. He said, Paul, I was watching the 12 Hours Bathurst. I'm surprised to see that the Heart of Racing is in a Mercedes SLS AMG and not an Aston Martin. Yet there is an Aston Martin in the race. WTF. I thought Heart of Racing was the Aston factory racing team. Please explain. Oh, thanks. P.S. I'm going into F1 withdrawal and can't wait for F1 to turn down under. GT racing is awesome. Not quite the same for F1 as for me. But anyway, what is going on, Paul?
What is going on? Well, it's kind of a historical thing, really. So we needed a place for some of our other drivers to get their feet wet, so to speak. There's a series called Creventic, which is kind of like, a lower tier sports car series that goes around the world. They do the 24-hour races and stuff like that, but it's not WEC level. And at the time, they were running tires and rule package that didn't really make any sense to run the Aston. It just wouldn't. The rule package didn't make it attractive. The Mercedes was a really good pick for that series. We built up a relationship with the SPS group, a German team, as we moved along with that. And as I said, it's really kind of a team car thing for us to do the odd thing here and there, mainly built around the Creventic stuff. But we got a lot on our plate to then put another Aston out there is difficult.
A lot of work.
We want to run it ourselves if we're running the Aston, and we wouldn't let another team run us in an Aston. So we worked with SBS, who had a lot of knowledge of the Mercedes.
Yeah.
So we join our teams and use their knowledge to get the most out of it. And on occasion we get to do even cooler races than the Creventic, which is kind of like doing Bathurst and everything, but we were able to get Gray Newell's got GT a lot more GT3 experience that way, and so he's jumping into GT3 Aston in SRO. We've now started to bring Hannah into the GT3 field, hopefully progress her up through the field. But the Mercedes, and it's a historical thing where we have a great relationship with the team. We don't see any reason to change that, because it's kind of like our little play car, so to speak, and uncomplicated car as it is. So that's the reason. Yeah, obviously we're very tied to Aston Martin in all the professional ranks, and I wouldn't say Aston are super excited about us when we run the Mercedes, but it is just kind of a fun thing to do occasionally. It's a kind of a no stress way to go racing and bring our younger drivers up and give them the experience they need.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. That does it for the preseason preview. But as I mentioned, if you like this podcast, give us some love at your favorite podcast player. And a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. And Paul, the season starts this weekend down under in Australia. It's amazing.
I know. I got my race at Sebring.
Yep.
Formula One all in the same weekend. I don't even know what I'm going to do.
So you got to watch Sebring this weekend. Got to watch Formula One this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. And
should be a lot of fun.
We'll be back to review the race. So until next week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.